A lot of people say to me, how do you feel coming back to your school? I said, it's quite flabbergasting. And that's when it's so interesting to me that the floors sound the same, you know, because they sounded this way in 1942, and yet they were built in 13, and yeah, they haven't gotten better or worse. I've been volunteering for many, many years, and since I'm very familiar with everything in the museum, I do tours for the museum too. I grew up here. I graduated in 1952, and then I went to Arizona State Teachers College. It's now Arizona State University, and it was in ROTC, and then I went to the Navy in my freshman year. I think when you get interested in history, it just kind of takes a hold of you. Well, historically, the first Gilbert School was at the corner of Baseline Road and Cooper, and it belonged to the Barclays, who were intermarried with the Andersons, my wife's family. Then that was 1900. 1909, they built another school, which we have a picture of up here, the block building. That's a 1909 school, and that was at the corner of Cooper and Guadalupe, also on a piece of the Barclay land. But the first school that created the Gilbert School District was this east wing of this school. And this was built in 1913, so this is a 100-year anniversary. Those original homesteaders that began to come in 1891 and acquire this property, their first desire was to have irrigation water, and so as the canal came through and they were able to get the water on the crops, they could grow about anything. But what they found was that they could grow alfalfa easier than anything else. Alfalfa became and was the main crop all through the First World War, and of course that's why we have Gilbert known in the First World War as the hay shipping capital of the world. But in the 20s, they found that they could grow cotton here just as easy as they could grow alfalfa, and it was a bigger cash crop. You could start working in the fields when you were 7 or 8 years old. I was picking cotton at 7 or 8. It made us very self-reliant. They were able, because of the railroad that had come through in 1902, when Murphy bought the right-of-way, one of the pieces he bought from Bobby Gilbert, and that's why they named that depot the Gilbert Depot. It was only after that businessmen started coming to Gilbert. So the railroad was a major factor in making that possible. When we came here from the Great Depression in Oklahoma in 1936, we were still kind of in the small town because Gilbert was only about 500 people. Everybody just lived separately, but everybody watched out for each other. I think it was part of that Gilbert was just a really close-knit group. What surprised me the most is I was mayor from 1971 to 1976. We went from about 1,800 population in this little one section to about 3,800 in that 6-year period. But by 5 years later, the growth area was well over 5,000. And then 10 years later, it's 85,000, and it was hard to believe the booming that was happening. See, I see through my 4 children and their grandchildren and their children that if they can relate it back to the early farmers that came here through the Homestead Entry Act, I think it helps for us to have a greater love for our community.